I see a lot of people that have maybe misconceptions of just a weird understanding of the self and consciousness and free will and stuff like that. So they kind of have a loose understanding of the concepts and the science itself, and therefore their definitions of the subjects and their understanding of the subjects are not up to par with modern science itself. So it's very much philosophical, very much religiously grounded or grounded in feelings, not really grounded in modern understanding of the mind. So I will try to give you a short introduction. It will just not that short, but still pretty short introduction into how the mind works. And instead of using modern science, I will try to use some analogies to really get my point across, because just using modern science is clearly not enough, because there's a lot of misunderstanding still on the field. So I will try to explain everything about the human mind and how it kind of works in principle. And I will just show you all the slides. I've written a lot of text and trying to group these slides into categories. And there's also quite a lot of pictures, so don't worry about there being a lot of slides. Yeah, this will be everything. And I will talk about AI, I will talk about operating systems and how we react automatically, and how we react slowly and fast to stuff, how we think fast and slow, and if that's real thing or not. What about dualism of mind? Is that a real thing or not? I will explain everything, and you will kind of get the concepts I'm trying to explain, but some of the slides will not be in the correct position. Maybe I still have to move stuff around a bit to make it perfect, but I think this is fine. Why human beings are advanced robots? Well, not according to the old theory, that's the blank slate theory, versus the multimodality theory, that's the new theory. And before I will go into these theories and how they explain the world and which one is the correct one, I will just say that for me personally, I don't have a horse in the race or whatever it's called. So if the theory of evolution or theory of gravity is proved wrong tomorrow, then I will be the first one to clap my hands and try to understand the new concepts. I just like to be right, I like to understand the world, but when I'm proved wrong, I'm trying to see why I'm proved wrong and then learn new concepts, because I always want to see things the right way and explain things the right way. So for me, of course, I have some understanding of the science, but some of my understandings are counter to my worldview. So that's what I think is really essential, that you know what you feel, you know what your worldview is, and know which part of your worldview or understanding of the world it influences. And for me, psychology as a science is not really something I want to have influenced by my worldview. And yeah, a lot of the concepts that I study the most are some of the concepts that I found the most prerogative, and the ones that are really hard to understand for me because I have this and that worldview. And another thing, this with when you discuss the theory of self or the theory of free will and stuff like that, then it can be a bit hard, because a lot of new people, they start with on the university, and what part of the science can you really discuss or argue about? Well, you can discuss and argue about definitions, right? About the words being used, about how you feel about stuff, or how you think it can influence society, like loose stuff that's not really grounded in science, because then you need to read a lot of stuff. So I see a lot of newcomers or laymen trying to discuss the definitions of words. So if I say that, well, when I say intelligence, I mean general intelligence, then many people will try to discuss the concept of intelligence or the definition of intelligence, instead of following my logical arguments after I use the term or the word. So oftentimes I'll just say, okay, I understand intelligence in this and that way. Maybe you don't use it this way, but right now I will use it this way, even though you think it's wrong. And what's important is the argument I'm trying to make, not the words I'm using to make this argument. So sometimes you just need to say, okay, it was fun discussing these words with you and these definitions, but let's go this extra mile. Let's take the step up in our discussion and then just agree on some definitions and move on. And this is another thing that's also owned by everyone: social science. This is also why I see today what I see today. With philosophy, a lot of people from philosophy want to discuss social science because a lot of it can be easy to discuss subjects without you needing to understand a lot of physics or mathematics or chemistry. You can discuss human beings and the mind and the self already from the get-go. You don't need to understand anything about it to discuss it, but it will be very very shallow and very unintelligible. No, not. Yeah, just low-level discussions. You need to read and understand the science to discuss it on a higher level. So just because you can discuss social science doesn't mean you understand it fully. And you're always welcome to discuss it, but I have a problem with people trying to teach other people about social science while not understanding it fully. This is the same way I see the people who knock on doors and try to preach their religion to people. They have a feeling about the religion, and they're not really experts on their religion or religious thinking and stuff like that. They just have a feeling they want to convey. And this is what I also see in social science a lot. A lot of discussions about feelings. That's also something you can do. It's a lot of fun, but yeah, it's not really progressing the science as such. You feel that you're progressing the science. You feel that, well, if I discuss the definitions of intelligence, then I will add to the discussion. Well, not really, because we have taken this discussion a million times before, and we're just using the terms in a certain way. So you discussing it is fine, and it's a good start, but you need to read the subject if you also want to educate people about it. And this is the first hypothesis. This is the one I want to create an antithesis towards. So this is the old hypothesis of the blank slate. Some say that the blank slate hypothesis is not really a hypothesis, or one or several are not really used today. That it's outdated and people kind of joke about it because it was not really used at all ever, and it's the hypothesis of the brain being a sponge. We are born with a blank slate, and then we learn stuff along the way. So we learn from culture and society, and then we learn this information and use this information. Well, people kind of say, well, we don't know. No one really thinks this way. We kind of all know that we're not just blank slates. That there's more to the brain, and we are born with some things. But the blank slate today is kind of more of a concept used to explain a way of thinking, and mostly it's not a complete. People who believe in a blank slate don't believe in a complete blank slate. They kind of believe that society has a lot to say, and groups and social interactions have a lot to say on how we react to stuff. So, for example, if you're a man and you're attracted to women, they will say, well, that's society. Society made you become attracted to women. That's just society forcing this on you. You were not born with, maybe you were born with some fluid sexuality and then was made into what it is today. So you could have been attracted to chairs or the sun or whatever. Could have been anything. And so this is how I understand the blank slate hypothesis, that it's about overestimating the social influence. It's not about thinking about the brain as a completely blank from the get-go. And what they think is the brain is magical, and it's not really created by evolution as such, because everything else we see in the world, all organisms, all plants, and all the human body is created by evolution. but not the brain. The brain is created by society. And this is what they use, the social constructivist hypothesis. So you have a blank slate and everything is created by society. So these two go together, the blank slate and social constructivist. They kind of go together because if you're born with a blank slate and you don't learn anything, then, well, you're still a blank slate. But so you need a theory to explain how this blank slate is filled up with knowledge. And yeah, my last point is here that they also say that really science and scientific thinking and modern psychology cannot really explain the human mind, because there's a lot of stuff going on and a lot of, it's kind of magic, it's kind of really, it's kind of soul, something spiritual or something holistic, right? So many stuff going on that we cannot really explain it, and most of this stuff comes from society, so it's also outside influence. So even if you can see the brain and study the brain, you really can't understand it because everything is cultural. Everything is one, holistic. So all other animals are controlled by instincts. Of course, a fish is controlled by instincts, of course. But I am not, because I'm unique, I'm special, I have a soul. As I feel I can make decisions in my life, as I have free will, that of course implies that I am special. And the usefulness in blank slate, as I see it today, it's more like a religious concept, or a concept of the self that can kind of make you calm down. So let's see the next slide. Yeah. So for example, you have an understanding of the self, or you have an understanding of society and groups, and then you can use this understanding. Maybe I will just have the slide here so you can read it. But you can use this understanding to calm yourself down. So for example, hey, I like strawberries. Why do I like strawberries? Well, I grew up in this and that society, so I probably like the color red, and therefore, because I like the color red, I like strawberries. Something like that, right? So you can explain a lot of things away. So you don't really need to read the science or understand the instincts. For example, why we like certain foods, why we learn to like certain foods, and for example, maybe we're born with some instincts that makes us like, or modules in the brain that makes us like sugar or fats and other stuff. Well, you don't really need to read up on that, because if you have this universal theory that can be applied to everything, then you can just use that theory to explain everything. That's the same with religion, right? So why did my grandparents die? Well, because God willed it, or because God works in a mysterious way. So you can use it to calm yourself down. Well, I can explain things away because I have this universal theory that I have this hammer that sees everything as a nail. So I just hit all these nails that pop up, and then I'll never have to notice these nails because I have this hammer. Pop, 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 pop. And this is also what philosophy and religion did and does. Of course, when I wrote this slide, I also have a grammatical error here, but no, never mind. When I wrote this slide, of course, I was talking about philosophy as a tool used to advance religion, because that's what it was used for a lot of the time by some of the greatest philosophers. So 200, 300 years ago, at least from the Middle Ages to the Renaissance, philosophy was really used to advance religious thinking, advance God, and advance his existence, and why we are special, we have a soul, we are unique, and we need to pray to God. So philosophy was really much used to explain religion and sell religion to people. But before that, it was actually also used a lot, and today also used a lot to fill out the holes, the same way religion was used to fill out the holes. So if you see the planets move about, then you can explain it with philosophy too. Well, Earth is in the center, because we are special human beings, so we are in the centrum, and then the planets move this and that way because there's a force there, or maybe we believe because that's one, like that could also be explained by philosophy. Well, that's maybe it's something maybe we are made out of blood or something like that, right? You can always use philosophy and religion to explain these things. And then at one point they kind of combine into one, and then a lot of philosophers try to explain away religious concepts. And yeah, it's the same way the blank slate works. So you kind of trying to fill out the holes, and then sometimes there'll be new scientific findings that will come about and say, wait a minute, this fear of snakes is not really it's not really something we just learn culturally. It kind of comes naturally to us to fear snakes. Yeah, of course we need to learn it. We also need to learn to eat with our mouth. That's not something we just, I mean, that's still something we need to learn, right? But it's also an instinct. So we kind of do it automatically, but still need to learn it a bit. Or need to learn to walk, right? Is walking an instinct? Well, we still need to learn it, right? So whatever, what is it? And when we have this scientific progress, it kind of fills out these holes. And philosophy, religion, and the blank slate hypothesis they kind of move to the side. So right now they can go into the social science fair, because we're still discussing. There's still room to discuss definitions and discuss simple understandings like the self or the free will. So you can always discuss these things, even as a philosopher or religious thinker or blank slate sympathizer. You don't really understand the psychological thinking, you can still add to the discussion. At least you feel like you can add to the discussion, and also use it politically. While it's of course harder to be a philosopher in physics, which was very modern many years ago, and it's easier to be a philosopher in psychology, because a lot of people still think you're smart even if you have never read a single psychology book. And this is what I say right here. If you have an extremist view, political view, socialism on the extreme left or right, so you believe in group thinking, you believe that the mind is mendable and the mind can be changed to whatever. For example, if you think that human beings should love to suffer, and I can make them love suffering. So my political system is perfect, because I can change the mind. I can change the way human beings think. Well, then of course you need this as blank slate thinking, because the blank slate is perfect for that. As human beings are born with a blank slate, I can use my perfect view of utopia to create a strong state that will change the way people function and think about stuff. So maybe they won't want to get rich, maybe they won't want to own a car, maybe they won't want to reproduce or whatever, right? Maybe they will love the group and want to sacrifice themselves for the group. So you think about this utopia, and you kind of need an extreme theory that you can use to explain away your extremist view politically. And then I have this antithesis to this hypothesis of the blank slate. So with multimodality, you actually have multimodality in your brain. So you have these modules, and you have a lot of them. Not just one, not just two. You don't have just one sponge or just one blank slate. You are born with 100,000 instincts or maybe more, and all of them work together. They combine and then make up something that we have chosen to define as a free will or as self. But in reality, they are individual instincts. So they're just parts. They have evolved via millions of years, and they are parts. So for example, when you feel hungry, is that yourself? What about if you feel hungry, horny, and tired at the same time? Which of these is the self? Because one of them is a need that you will try to fulfill first. So does that mean that's one of them is the self? What about if they fight amongst each other? But if you only have one self, then surely it cannot fight against itself, because it's only one self. How can it fight against itself? Then you need multiple selves so they can fight each other. That's exactly how modern science in psychology understands the concept of self. That you don't have one self, you have multiple selves. And why do you have multiple selves? Well, maybe as our ancestors, maybe as we were fish needed to solve some problems in their environment. or more like they were evolved to solve some problems. Of course, it was random selection, but there were also some sexual selection and natural selection that make them that made sure that the best one or the most effective ones could survive, and the ones that didn't solve the problems as well could not reproduce at the same rate or with the same success. So some modules were evolved in a brain to solve some problems, and this is not just one module, not just one blank slate, but there are thousands and thousands of different modules, and they have evolved via millions of years, not just now, but for example, when we feel hunger or when we do maths in our brain, is that a new instinct to do mathematics in our brain? Or speaking, is that a new instinct? Well, probably not, and it's also based on older instincts. So maybe a speech center is based on some really old instincts or some old brain modules. So the brain is kind of a lot of if-then mechanisms evolved on top of each other, and I will explain what I mean with that later. So this is how we understand the brain today. We have all these modules, and we have 1,000 more of these modules and categories, and all these brain centers created to solve some problems in our environment. And also we have these instincts, and these instincts are not always in one part of the brain. They can be like all over the brain, or maybe we can't even discover them, because it's like having a program on your computer, right? Where's the program located on your hard disk? Well, it can be located in several places, right? It doesn't just have to be one place on the hard disk. It can be located in this, and this location. So that's what instincts are, and modules too. But you can also see physical modules. And maybe they're not concrete, so you cannot just draw a line and say this and this is a module. But sometimes you can do that. And there are some modules, for example, for motor function, and these are the physical modules. Understanding language, speaking, hearing sounds, visual. So visual center at the back of your head. If you get a knock to the back of your head, you can get blind. But why is that? Because if you had a blank slate, then surely you would not just get blind by getting a knock to the back of the head. You could get blind by, I don't know, getting a knock anywhere. But that's not the case at all. Free will does not exist. And this is this is the cat in the box. Is dead or alive? Yeah. Again, if you apply the modern way of thinking about physics and the modern way of thinking about psychology, then the free will cannot exist, because we see in the physical world, we just have physical rules. So if something happens, then something reacts. This is how energy interacts with each other. Energy is something, some energy started somewhere, and then from Big Bang, and then everything from Big Bang till now has been a mathematical formula. Nothing new has been added, right? Everything has interacted with each other in predictable steps, except if you also apply the quantum mechanics thinking, and that's the randomness. So you don't know if the cat is alive or dead, because there's some randomness to the universe. But I see a lot of people use this randomness to conclude that free will must exist or could exist because there's this randomness. But usually this is explained away by saying that, well, randomness is losing control, not gaining it. And as free will is control, then surely randomness cannot create free will. And more randomness will not mean that there's more free will. Unless your brain can control quantum mechanics and influence quantum mechanics, then you don't have free will as such. And I'm not a physicist, so I'm not an expert on this. And I know there's a lot of extremist thinkers in that support the blank slate hypothesis, free will hypothesis, and maybe they're also extreme leftists. So they really want to be correct, because they really have a lot of their emotions involved into this, and they feel that quantum mechanics can be influenced by the brain, because they need free will to exist for communism to make sense in their in their worldview. So they really want free will to be a thing. The same with religious people or libertarians. A lot of them want free will to actually be a thing. So they're kind of forcing science to agree with their concepts of reality. Oh, what did you see? We're scared of the bear? Well, when you think about it, you maybe think that, well, I can make up my mind. I see the bear attack me, and then I can, well, maybe I should stick it in the eye. Maybe I should run away. Maybe I should play that. Playing that is probably a stupid idea, no matter what animals is attacking you, pretty much. But this is how you actually react, right? The bear attacks you, you react in a way where this is how the world is. You perceive some stimuli and then your brain reacts automatically. You don't necessarily think slowly about everything and choose to do something. You react instinctively, and these instincts is exactly what I'm trying to argue for, that everything in our brain is an instinct. Everything is caused by instincts. There's nothing else in the brain. There's no self in the brain as such. There's no free will in the brain. Everything is just a combination of instincts. If something happens, then, and if you have enough of these kind of line of instincts in your brain, or line of thinkings, then you have a self. If you see a bear, then this happens. If you see the eyes of a bear, then this happens. If you see the teeth of a bear, then this happens. So, and this is not oneself doing all of this. This is multiple instincts. So you have something. You also have a visual center seeing the bear. You can smell the bear. You can feel the bear, and that's just the feelings you have or the perceptions of the bear. Then you have all these instincts always calculating what you need to do with these perceptions you get inside of your brain. And of course, when you make a mistake, that's just the instincts making a mistake. We're not perfect human beings because we only had evolution created us to, didn't really create us. We were created in evolution to solve specific problems, but good enough to reproduce. We're not perfect machines. We cannot run 100 kilometers an hour because evolution didn't really evolutionary. There was no great force selecting leg muscles to make us run that fast. That would require a lot of energy during our lifetime. So you will need a lot of resources around you, a lot of fruit, a lot of meat to sustain such muscles in your legs. That would require a lot of resources, and you don't really have a lot of resources around you in any kind of environment. Of course, you have it today, but not in your hunter-gatherer kind of environment. Or before that, you have some resources, and then you have the body can sustain a really, really huge brain, but not huge enough to never make mistakes. That will require an enormous brain to understand everything, to see everything. That's just not possible. You see all colors, see everything? No. And also understand everything you see every second. So you may think that you see the bear. This is how you react to stuff. You see stuff and you think about them and then you solve them slowly. Well, not really. You just use your instincts. It's all automatic. And even when you think you're thinking slowly, you're not really thinking slowly. You're just using your instincts. I don't know if they are slow or fast, or which are slow or fast. Of course, some instincts are made in a way that they will make our body react really, really fast, and some instincts are maybe not that connected to our brain, to our body in the same way. But you're still, no matter if you think about mathematics or language or whatever, or you're hearing stuff, you're still reacting the same way by an instinct. It's automatic. and this is also how I wanted to explain it. You're born, you're attracted to a certain kind of people, and when you talk to your family members or siblings or friends, then this is instincts talking. So when a brother is talking to a sister, there are a lot of instincts in the brother, especially for this kind of communication. A daughter talking to a mother, it's not just a blank slate. There's some instincts in the daughter's mind, just evolutionary selected to talk to a mother, to this kind of person. So everything is imprinted. There's a lot of imprinting and a lot of instincts. And when we communicate with certain kind of people, when you communicate with a person you find attractive, then some kind of instincts will be activated. And this is what you have emotions for. You have some emotions in your brain, and then they can activate some line of thinking. So this emotion can activate these 100 modules, or this emotion could activate these 1000 modules, or these 1000 instincts, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't really matter if you call it instincts or modules. It's all just an explanation of things. I don't want to argue about definitions. So yeah, you have these emotions that kind of guide your brain, telling your brain, okay, now I need to activate these instincts, now I need to do this thing. So now this person, I'm attracted to this person, let me just activate this and this and this and this and that. Or maybe I'm not attracted to this person, so I don't need to activate this and this and that. Then maybe I need to activate something else. That's emotions. They activate something, but you always have an instinct to communicate with people. And these are modules instincts. As you see, this is how the self really is. This is a great, or maybe this is the self, or this is the self. As you can see, yeah, sorry for this. As you can see, there's a lot of stuff going on in your head, and there's smaller and smaller stuff, and a lot of combinations. So there's not just one self, not just one free will. That makes no sense at all to just say it's one thing. It's one blank slate, it's one sponge. And yeah, but what about these instincts? What about this free will? If we have enough modules, doesn't it mean that we now have a free will because we have so many choices? So when things are going slowly, when we are not on that track, we're just relaxing or making choices in our daily life, doesn't mean we have free will because we have these options. Well, chimpanzees, some dolphins and elephants, they have a perception of self, right? They can see themselves in the mirror, understand that they are themselves. So they also have free will. Maybe some people will argue that they don't have a free will. They do have a self and a conception of self, a consciousness, but maybe they don't have a free will or something. I don't know what free will is. But yeah, how many instincts are required or modules are required for us to have something called a free will? 100,000, 50,000 modules or instincts? And how many do we have? So it's all about the number, right? It's about the quantity of these if-then mechanisms in a brain. So, but maybe we have a free will and chimpanzees have free will. What about fishes? Do they have a free will? What about rocks? What about sand? What about the sun? What about a tree? Then you need a clear line, right? If there's something called free will, then you must have defined something as free will. And what is it? There needs to be a clear line. And this is what I try to explain here. Let's say Windows 3.1 does not have free will, but then you add a lot of instincts or modules to Windows, and now you have a more advanced system. Well, does Windows 98 now have free will because you added a lot of extra stuff to it? Well, most people will say no, but why doesn't it have free will? Well, maybe because you didn't add enough instincts. You need to add so many instincts that it finally also have a perception of self in some way and thinks it has a free will. And when it starts to think it has a free will itself, that maybe we will start to say that it has a free will, even though everything in it is programmed to do certain things. So everything is an if-then mechanism. There's nothing extra to the operating system or to the AI. It's just programmed to solve problems. But at some point in time, it will think it has a free will because it's working exactly the same way as a brain is working. Right now it's primitive, so maybe you would say, well, the environment is so simple that it doesn't really have a self or free will because the environment is simple. It needs a more complicated environment and even more if-then mechanisms because we are living in a complicated environment and we are special. And this is about consciousness. It's not just one module, it's 100 different modules in a brain. And if the computer can choose to do some certain calculations, does it then have a free will? Because we can actually program an AI to have more free will than we have, to solve problems even better, to understand itself much better than we do, because we understand that we have made a decision after it has been made. But maybe we can program our operating system and AI to understand much more about how it makes decisions. When we, for example, feel attracted to some person, or when we feel hunger, or if we love carrots or hate potatoes, well, we don't necessarily know why we do these things, because maybe we're just born this way. Maybe we're just born with certain kind of way of tasting food, so we don't like these foods but we like this food. Well, with operating systems and AIs, you probably don't have the same kind of problems all the time. They will understand more of their own instincts because they will have a greater free will and greater perception of self than we have. 99% of what we do as human beings, we don't really understand. It's just all automatic. Nearly everything is automatic, and a bit of it is something that we can understand or we can perceive. Okay, I see this, and why do I see that? Because evolutionary it was important for us to see some stuff, because if we have a lot of cheaters in a group, then we need some instincts to detect cheaters, and these instincts also need to they also need to understand ourselves. We need to understand ourselves in a group, and then when we understand ourselves in a group, then we can also then these cheater detectors in our brain, they work, because now we understand ourselves, we understand when we are being cheated, and we also understand how to cheat other people. And this was necessary because it's important to gain resources and reproduce successfully. I was thinking about something else, but now I forgot it, I think. The AI. Again, if you want to create an AI, you need if-then mechanisms. You need a lot of if-then mechanisms. Add more and more to it, and at some point you will say, well, now my operating system has free will. Now it has enough if-then mechanisms, because our brain was evolved in a similar way that we are evolving operating systems. Of course, this is this is arbitrary selection, so we are selecting what we wanted to do. So it's not just random selection or evolutionary fit organisms that survive, but maybe we can also make software that kind of automizes programming. So we will say, well, we have these problems. Let's just run the simulation and then see what software wins out. Well, this software is most effective at solving these problems, so I will integrate this software into the operating system. So you will need to run a lot of simulations to be able to solve problems and program an effective AI. It will take a lot of time, because you can't just program itself. It's not a thing. You need to program small things, and then they will become a self. Yeah, again, creativity, and that's just some questions I have, or I thought people might have. Well, creativity is the same way, right? It works the same way as everything else. You solve problems creatively, so you also have a creativity because you need this kind of thinking, and you can also apply it for other stuff. But it's made to think outside the box to solve the problems while using different kind of instincts, and this is not impossible for a computer to do in the future. Of course not. It can also it can be taught to be creative. That's no problem. It will come at some point. What about the free will? Is the concept not bad? Because when we learn, when right after a class about the concept of not having free will, then we see the students cheat a bit more because they kind of get an illusion that you can now cheat while still feeling good about yourself. Well, that's a bad thing, right? Well, I don't care. That's not what science is about. Feeling something about something yourself, that's not science. Science is describing stuff. And then you have the mind-body dualism. Actually, I should have started with this, with the blank slate hypothesis. It actually follows this kind of philosophical thinking. That there is a mind and then there is a body, and there's also a thinking I see today, but most people kind of describe it as thinking fast and slow. So you have fast and reptile-like brain, and then you have slow thinking where you think about stuff. So what did Daniel Kahneman think about this concept? Well, of course, he said it was bollocks. That's the first pages of his books. He says there's no such thing as a fast thinking or slow thinking. But I will just explain these different studies as that. And what he's trying to explain in his book is actually also instincts. So this is evolutionary psychology. He just doesn't know anything about evolutionary psychology. But this is pretty much, yeah, this is evolutionary psychology. But we don't group things that we don't understand. So it's more about quantity versus quality. So it's not fast versus slow, it's just a lot of instincts or modules make us able to become creative or make us able to make more choices. And then also there are models for us to understand that we are ourselves, and all of that can create an illusion of slow thinking, but it's still, I don't know if there's a speed involved with that or not. It's just more modules, not different kind of modules. Yeah, that's my that's the what's called a leaf blowing in the wind, right? Example of from philosophy of free will. Well, this is how human beings are. We are leaf blowing in the wind, or I like to use this example: a rock falling into the water and then going left, right, and then sinking slowly to the bottom. Did it have free will in how it sank to the bottom? Not really, but how can it move about? Well, there are some influences on it, right? The way it was thrown into the water or fall into the water, and the way the water influences the rocks. All of these influences makes it move a certain way. It still is not living. It doesn't really have a free will or concept of self or anything like that, but it still moves around. So what are these influences? Well, they're just stimuli, and that's the same way a human body moves. It's just stimuli from the brain to the body. So we are stimulated and we do certain things and we move about in the society and in the group, but it's not really, it's not really different from how a rock moves about. We're still falling. We started from Big Bang, and everything is influenced by the Big Bang. All the energy is from there, and everything is moved in the right direction. If you can calculate what Big Bang is and how it works, how all the atoms interact in the Big Bang, then if you remove the randomness principles of quantum mechanics, then you pretty much should be able to calculate what people are doing today, what every single person is doing today, and what he will do, because you have the only thing you have is the calculations of Big Bang. But you still should be able to predict the future, right? That's how I see it. That's what I see in the rock when it flows from left to right. If you know enough about the water stream and how the rock was thrown, well, if you have a lot of info, then you should be able to calculate what way it will move, how fast it will move, this and that way. The same with the human mind. When we know a lot more about evolutionary psychology and instincts, then we'll be able to calculate what people will do, when they will do it. And then we can also scan the brain and do more scan studies, stuff like that. At the end, if we can calculate enough stuff, but we also need to calculate your society and your group, stuff like that, and also the weather, a lot of stimuli that influences your body. But at the end, if you had enough data, we will be able to predict every single move you do, every single move, even the day you die. If we just have enough formulas on a table to calculate this stuff. We need a lot of calculations because we need to calculate how everything moves around you. But yeah, you cannot act in another way. Everything you do is already predicted by mathematics or by physics. We just don't know about it, so we think it's free will. We think there's some choices to be made here. And yeah, what I think should be done is, like, these concepts and these definition discussions from outside of these academic fields, they really don't add that much because there are no new clear definitions of stuff. Philosophers used to talk about physics, talk about chemistry, talk about biology, because these fields had holes in them, right? So there were room to discuss stuff. And now people think that psychology has these holes in it. And it does at some part. But it's mostly because these people have not read psychology as such. So many of these philosophers are laymen. They have not read psychology. So they think there's a lot of holes in psychology that they can fill out with their hypotheses about the blank slate or free will or social constructivism. But in reality, psychology has already explained a lot of these things. We have explained away why do human beings fear snakes? Well, why do we eat fats? Well, it's not just society making us eat fats. We do have some instincts inside our body that are there to make us like fats, because in our prehistoric times, it was very, very essential for us to get as much fats as possible, because you pretty much could not get too many fats, because there were not enough resources for you to get too many fats. And today that's of course a problem with the McDonald's and cheap food. You can get too much of this, but it's still explained with psychology, right? And if you don't know these concepts about instincts and how they work and how they influence the mind, then you can still apply your super hypothesis about social constructivism on everything, just as you can with religion. Well, God willed it. It happened because God willed it. That's why it happens. Then of course you don't need to understand the laws of nature or physics. You can just understand your own line of thinking. That's a worldview. And the moral responsibility, that's again, I will bring this up again because as free will, if it does not exist, then should criminals be punished? Well, I don't care, right? That's not what science is about. When you go out in a society and talk to your politicians or vote on a politician, then you're actually doing something. Science is about describing stuff and not acting in a certain way. So I don't know why this is in any way an important question to ask. I don't really care what the hell you do. If I find out that when you kill an individual, this and that happens, well, I'm not telling you to make a law on this basis. I'm not telling you to create a law based on the fact that human beings like fats and it's instinctual and that you cannot change it by some outside force. You can do that, or you cannot. Maybe you choose not to do it. I don't care. And of course, the modern line of thinking is not free will. It's the compatibilist thinking, where determinism and free will are compatible with each other. We feel that we have free will, so therefore free will must exist. But because it's impossible for it to exist, then determinism must also be true. So both things are kind of true. It's kind of like the argument from religion where Jesus is his father, but not his father. So it's kind of a weird kind of way of thinking about stuff. But I kind of get what they're coming from, because yeah, of course we do feel that we are making decisions. So it's not the same way a fish feels about the self. Maybe it also feels as making decisions, but we also feel as our own body. We have a concept of self. So what is that? Well, let's just call it free will. I don't care really what you call it. Yeah, if you can make logical choices, yeah, you can make logical choices, but really it's like having a computer with a lot of if-then options, and then also emotions. So we programmed emotions into it because that's of course needed for it to activate the right modules at the end. And then when the right modules win out, is that a free will and a choice you're making? Well, there's a lot of modules wanting something in a brain. One module wants to eat fats, the other module wants to look slim. And which module is the self? Well, they're just different modules. And one winning out over the other is not really, is that a slow way of thinking? Not really, because if you need to explain what a slow way of thinking, a fast way of thinking, then you need to describe all the modules, instincts in your brain, and then after you have described them all, clearly describe them all, then we can group them and sort them. But right now I cannot tell you what the hell it means to have a fast or slow thinking. I mean, there's some modules that are made to make sure our body reacts in a fast way, and some modules of course are made to have more time to think up a solution to a problem. But is there a clear line that divides these two? I'm not sure. I'm not sure I understand this clear line of thinking. I just know there are instincts there. And the last slide is psychology is a science or not. Well, you can use psychology in a way where you say, well, I feel this and that way, and this theory makes me feel good, and this hypothesis makes me feel good. But you can also try to use psychology as a science, and then go try to use it more as a hard science. And then try to look at how humans behave and try to describe how humans behave. Do social studies, do studies in laboratory, do brain study experiments. Yeah, and try to come to understanding of the brain. Of course, we still discuss these concepts of free will and the self, and you can still talk about it with your friends and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, using feelings to discuss scientific subjects, that's fine and dandy, but there's a difference between psychology as a science and psychology as a tool to discuss stuff. That's what I call philosophy. And that's all. I think this is a very confused video, but maybe I think it's helped myself to understand some stuff and probably help you a bit too, but really need to be made more concise. Thank you.